Well, my story is that it started with the failure of the International Tropical Timber Organization to show any leadership in regulating the timber trade. And when we realized that we weren't going to get sustainability through intergovernmental processes, there was this ferment of, well, how are we going to deal with these matters in forests? We were already talking about rights and livelihoods, even back in the 80s. And then that's how I felt it came about. But I know there were other forces at play, particularly WWF, who perhaps already had seen that you should follow the organic farming model. What was your story? Well, can you remember why you were there?
I was working with Greenpeace at the time and developed the International Forest Program, and we were using market pressure. So we were taking the demands and messages from the forest, from forest peoples, from local ecologists, from the local environment movement. We were taking that to the market and getting the market to demand that back to their supplier or to threaten to cancel. And so these were big campaigns because Greenpeace is a big organization. These were hundreds of millions of dollars of cancellations that were needed, that level of pressure to create change. And so we were getting good at saying, don't do that, and making that pressure. And we wanted to be able to say, don't do that, don't buy from there, buy from this instead. That's wrong, that's not sustainable, that's not in support of forest peoples. And we needed a system to be able to point to. We wanted something good as well as something bad.
Well, I think it's got much further than I thought. I anticipated it would turn into a sort of niche market that would point the way for what was necessary for achieving sustainable, responsible production. And I think it's grown bigger than I expected. And it's also led to change in other sectors who've copied it, like palm oil, which I'm also involved with. So in that sense, it's had more effect. But we still do have this puzzle of how do we really get our legislative, regulatory market reforms based on law that protect rights and the environment. So we're kind of halfway there, I feel, or some way there. I think it's the long journey still to make. Because personally, I don't think you can rely on people shopping to sort of make all these choices. It's got to be institutionalized to some extent. How about you? Do you think we've done it?
No, look, I completely agree. I mean, markets pressure is a great tool, but you can't do everything with it. And it's a fickle tool. Things do change, trends change, fashion changes. But also, I think FSC has gone much further than I thought. It's amazing. And I agree with its vision going forward, and that it is trying to transform more and more of the sector, and that also it's been inspirational for other sectors. So I think it's still got good miles in it. It's still got a long way to go. But I do agree that one of its challenges is how can FSC help in that broader context outside of the FMU, where you don't have that same leverage, and it won't be the same mechanism through through its rules and the threat of of losing a certificate. How can it play a role in the wider landscape? How can it play a role in jurisdictions, and how can it work with government? And I think that's a challenge for all of us, not just for FSC. But I'm fully committed to helping FSC to engage in those discussions and for it to be able to affect change in broader areas, as well as grow itself and the amount of certification it does.
But there's one other reflection I'd like to make. I mean, when we were all gathering in Toronto, the dream of many of us was that forestry would be devolved back to forest peoples, back to small forest owners, and the sort of big industrial forestry model would gradually fizzle out, or at least be discouraged. And somehow that hasn't happened. The small forest owners are still on the edge of it, and the indigenous peoples are still struggling to be recognised and get their rights in forests established. So that's a big job still to be done, I think. And, for me, a big achievement that we got this, and I was quite involved in some of the standard setting and the negotiations to get where we've got to. But I don't think we should be sort of slapping ourselves on the back too much about it, because it's all going to be about implementation. And there are genuine, quite big risks in the way we're going forwards. That we're opening the door to some companies who have not had a good track record by any means, and we're saying you can come in if you do this remedy, but to make sure that remedy really happens, it is going to be, well, a big challenge for them, but a big challenge for us to make sure that there isn't people finding loopholes. So yeah, it's an exciting moment, but it's also a challenging moment.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I do a lot of work in Indonesia. The pulpwood plantation sector in Indonesia is enormous. It covers many millions of hectares of intensely grown acacias and eucalyptus. Hundreds, possibly more than 1,000 villages have been displaced and lost access to their lands because of this industry. And so there's enormous social harm that's been caused, and also environmental harm. And so the hope is that through the changing of the cutoff date, there's a possibility these companies will want to and agree to remedy and restoration. But they're tricky businesses, and they haven't shown their willingness really without the FSC system to take on those human rights commitments in a full way. And so it will be a big challenge. But I think I'm excited that at least the framework now will allow them potentially to re-engage and creates the possibility for remedy and justice for perhaps more than 1 million people in Indonesia who suffered as a result of that sector, the pulpwood sector.